When I started this podcast, I knew I wanted to bring on passionate individuals who had spent a lot of time and energy on distance skateboarding. Gavin Conti is definitely one of those people. Gavin has been skateboarding for a while and has a great perspective on what it takes to overcome the challenges that distance skateboarders face. We discussed the mental side of Ultraskate, Gavin's skateboard collection, a little bit of gear talk, as well as we cover an event happening in November called Skate Camp. This episode is a little bit longer than the previous ones. As always, I'm your host, Max Frank. Thank you for listening. Welcome to Skating in Circles. I'm here with Gavin Conti. Gavin, what's up, my man?
Nothing much. How you doing, Max?
I'm doing good. Did I get your last name right there? I didn't ask before.
Yeah, Conti. Conti is correct.
All right. And Gavin Conti, where do you live now so the people know? Let's talk about a little transformation going on right now, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm currently residing in Greenville, South Carolina. However, I am in the process of moving to the Cleveland area up to Ohio, which will be an interesting move in terms of weather. However, there's some good skate trails and some good skating hopefully up there. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. There's the Social Push Cincinnati, right? I don't know how close Cincinnati is to Cleveland. I'm not good on Ohio.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's the opposite side of the state.
Oh, there you go.
Corey's done a great job. Excuse me. Corey's done a great job with that Social Push Cincy, and I'm pretty envious of, a weekly scene with tons of people. Greenville here is a little, on the lean side for skaters. There's a handful of us, and we meet up, on weekends and stuff. But it's really only me and one other guy, or maybe two or three others if you include the downhill guys who once in a while will join us on the trail. But anyway, yeah, it's not too big of a scene here, but up in Ohio, Corey's done a great job with Social Push Cincy, and I'm hoping to maybe, start a similar movement or at least get a couple skaters who are into some LDP up in Cleveland. I think it's about 4 hours away from Cincinnati, so not overly close.
You guys are going to have a little rivalry. It'll be like...
Yes, and actually, I think there's a really long trail. Corey skates it. The Miami Trail, I think, goes for a long way. So anyway, I'm sure we'll meet up and get some more support for LDP in the general Ohio scene. But I'm really hoping to get some skaters in Cleveland. It's always fun to skate with people.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. Having trails, I like the paved trails is key. I feel like, because anytime you ride one of the a skateboard on a trail, you definitely turn heads, like people take note of it and get a lot of questions. So it's a great way to spread the movement,
Absolutely. And, we have a good trail here in Greenville, South Carolina. It's called the Swamp Rabbit Trail. And, we definitely make some friends with cyclists, and they're pretty impressed with how fast we can go. And some people come visit here, so I was mentioning the local guys, really only a handful of us, but, if you expand the circle out to the Charlotte area, we got guys like Timmy P who come down and skate the trail as well. And, he's a legend. So, yeah, it's awesome. This is a good area, but, wish there was some more skaters around here. Just looking forward to the trails in Ohio, but not so much the weather in Ohio.
Yeah. I don't know what that's like. Is it super... Is it like New England, kind of like where it just gets cold for about half the year? I
expect it to be like New York. Yeah, I mean, where I grew up from, a horizontal perspective, it's a similar latitude. However, it's longitude, latitude. I don't know which one is the correct one to say there. But anyway,
I think you got it right. I
think latitude is right. Yeah, lats. Those are cross. Yeah. Anyway, it's a similar latitude to New York where I grew up, so I expect it to be, pretty cold in the winters. I've gotten real used to the warm weather here in South Carolina. I've gotten used to it real quick. So when it drops to the 40s and 50s here, I feel like it's super cold. So going up to where there'll be actual snow instead of just a dusting, it'll take me some time to get used to. But I'll probably start snowboarding again and trying to find some different activities there. So.
Yeah, you got to go back to that mentality of it stays 40 and 50 for a while. And when you're coming out of the winter, it's oh, it's 50 today. Let's go do something outside. Whereas on the other way, when you're coming from the summer, it's all right, let's stay inside. It's too cold. even when it's 50 degrees.
Yeah, I don't know how Adam does it. I mean, he skates in like Adam and Paul. I mean, I'm gonna have to try and do it. But those guys are just skating in, super cold temperatures. And I mean, it's kind of inspiring to try and get out there. I kind of feel like it's ridiculous for me to not be comfortable skating at 40 and 45. But I don't know. I get like cold induced asthma. It kind of bothers my lungs. And that's only gotten worse living in South Carolina. It's amazing how that line of where that starts to bother me has only moved up as I've gotten used to warm temperatures. So,
wow.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, I did fine when I used to live in Colorado. So it's just a matter of acclimating, I think.
Right. It sounds like you've lived quite a few places, so you're used to the acclimation factor.
For sure. Bounced around quite a bit after college. But, I've had, ups and downs with the frequency of skating, but I've pretty much always skated regardless of where I've lived. So
yeah,
that's been a staple for me.
So when was your first time on a skateboard? Got to ask you that.
Oh, yeah. The first skateboard I got was from my neighbor, Richard, who lived across the street. It was a Nash. It had alternating blue and red wheels.
Ooh.
And it was a single kick, probably like maybe 9.5 or 10 inches wide. I don't think it had any concave, if I remember correctly. But actually, I still have the deck. It's part of my collection. However, I repainted it many years ago, and to be honest, I kind of wish I didn't. I kind of wish I just left it original. But it was pretty trashed. It was falling apart, and I peeled the grip and then sanded it down and kind of refinished it. But anyway, that was I was really young. That was probably like maybe second grade time frame, and then I got an actual skateboard that was like a bit more usable with more conventional modern parts in fourth grade, and that was actually a Mongoose branded deck, which is a bike company, as you know. So my mom took me to a bike shop to get my tire fixed, and they had a skateboard there, and I begged for a skateboard. I mean, actually, I still remember what it looks like, but it got run over shortly after that. And then I got into like actual boards. Like I think after that, I got it was maybe an Element board. And then I went from Element to Enjoy decks. And I grew up skating, in grade school, skating with a bunch of the local kids. We did flip tricks, and we would go to Rampage Skate Park on Eastern Long Island on weekends. And the parents kind of rotated taking us to the skate park. Anyway, nice. I've been skating for a long time. And then, so to get around town, I actually got a Sector 9 pintail. Mm-hmm. I think it's like 40 something inches, the most conventional Sector 9 pintail, but we're talking maybe year 2000, 2001 time frame.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, probably maybe even 99. But I got a Sector 9 pintail, and I took a set of normal conventional skate trucks and I put them on the pintail, and then I would skate to my friends' houses who really didn't live far away. But, I put bigger wheels on those trucks, and I would actually carry my double kick popsicle board while skating the Sector 9 pintail. And I still have that one too. That's still in the collection as well. So I've been pretty nostalgic with some of my original decks, and I've kept them. That one I did not paint, and it's still all original, and it's I'd say it's got to be about 25 years old.
That's so cool. I feel like a lot of people from that time period probably have an experience like you explained, where you go into the bike shop as a kid and you end up with a skateboard somehow, and it's like a Mongoose brand, right? Like you said, like it's not a actual brand skateboard. That's fun.
Yeah, but I remember it all really, really vividly. That's probably one of the most, or some of the most vivid memories I have of like that time frame is skating with my buddies and going to get new skate shoes. And I really wanted the expensive, I think they were DC shoes that had the zipper tongue. I mean, I had nothing to put in there, but it was just the cool factor, and that stuff mattered, when you were around town, the gear that you had and everything. I remember getting called a poser for it. In the store, we walked into Sports Authority, me and my friends, and we were carrying our skateboards and still wearing our helmets. and like a group of kids there that were also in the store called us posers. I mean, I remember like the whole scene, being really young and dealing with all that. But anyway,
Poser.
yeah, good memories.
Yeah, for wearing your helmet inside the Sports Authority. It's a crime, honestly.
At the time, I don't know if I fully understood the term, to be honest with you. I think I was really confused. Like, what do you mean? I skated here, Like, what do you mean?
It's so stupid.
What am I supposed to be? Skating in the store? It's like, I was pretty confused, but I think it was just, normal kid stuff. Yeah, but anyway, it was all great memories. We used to try and ollie stair sets, and, it was kick flips, and then it was varial flips, and, there's the natural progression that I think a lot of us went through as kids.
Yeah. You have this board collection. I want to get into that, but when did you find like distance skateboarding as a thing, right? Like, because I feel like a lot of people like you, right? Maybe you rode skateboards as a kid. You've, been skateboarding, and then all of a sudden, what happened?
I think in high school, when we all got cars, I didn't skate for a short time period there. I think I was too cool to skate around town at that time frame. And but when I got to college, my random roommate, who still is my good buddy, who was at Ultraskate with me last year, you might have met him. His name is
cool.
Doug. But anyway, he was my random roommate. We were into a lot of similar things: skateboarding, snowboarding, all board sports. You never would catch us watching a football game or anything like that on television. It was just not us.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we actually, he brought a FlexDex to our room, and it was a little FlexDex skateboard. And I wanted one like it. I went and bought a Sector 9 double kingpin 30-inch or 32-inch pintail, again, still part of the collection. And I cruised around town on that, and at Penn State. I went to Penn State, and we had a lot of fun cruising campus. And then I went home for summer, and there was a trail on Long Island that would go to the Jones Beach Theater. And that was about 4 miles and change at the time. They've extended it since. It's really a fantastic trail. However, at the time, it was about 4.5 miles tip to tip. And so I went out there on a board, and I was like, maybe I'll try and do a mile. And so like the ground was marked. I wasn't running any apps or anything like that. This was 2007, maybe 2008. And I was like, oh, I'm going to try to do a mile, and I did a mile, and then I did a mile back. And then I said, oh, I'm going to try to do 2. And then it just naturally progressed. And eventually I was doing, 2 or 3 laps. And again, I thought that was insane. I thought that doing 9 miles and then going out and back would be, round trip was 9 miles, and then doing it again, I was like, oh my gosh, I just skated 18 miles, and this is like 2008, 2009 timeframe. Actually, what's pretty cool is I started using an app called Runkeeper in 2009, and I just downloaded it recently, and all of my original skates are still in there. Of course, now we all use Strava, cool. But anyway, yeah, it's funny to see the old statistics and the old mapping of all the rides. But yeah, anyway, so I started doing distance around that 2008, 2009 timeframe. My first true like distance skate was I started on the South Shore of Long Island, and I went north, and my goal was just to keep going north until I saw the water. So, I started near the water, really across the street from the bay, on the South Shore. I wanted to skate until I saw water on the North Shore and then skate back. And I had no clue where I was going. I didn't have a planned route. I just kept stopping, every mile or two just to look at a map and figure out where I was going to go. It was totally sketchy.
Nice.
Was not on like sidewalks the whole time or trails. It was like kind of skating busy roads and windy roads when you get up to the North Shore of Long Island. But anyway, that was like 42 miles. And I thought that it was like the craziest thing known to mankind.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, coast to coast, on Long Island.
Coast to coast.
It was really only like 40 something miles. But anyway, yeah. So that as I think a lot of others have mentioned on your podcast, it's just kind of like a natural progression where you realize you're actually covering ground. You can actually do this. And then, there's that whole fitness side of things that come along with covering miles like that. So I got hooked on that like runner's high that you get, from covering ground and having accomplishments like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just snowballed from there. I've actually been distance skating for a really long time, maybe going on about 14 or 15 years now. specifically distance skating, but I didn't get into really hanging out with the group and skating competitively at events until more recently. So that's been a really exciting change in my skating style and habits.
That's super cool. You kind of just picked up the board one day, hopped on a trail, and started riding that way, which I think is really interesting because, you know, like I picked it up just by trying to ride from like place to place and then realizing I was having more fun riding between place to place. And then I would like seek out trails, you know? So starting on a trail is a nice way to progress too. Sounds like the 4.5 miles is a good starting point for anyone.
That was really the start of my like LDP focus. I mean, of course, you know, we covered some ground around Penn State, me and my friend Doug. And then, you know, there was a Penn State longboard club, which is a whole topic in itself. There was a lot of innovation happening. You know, Austin Barnett from Buzz Trucks was my colleague, or my colleague, my, you know, fellow student at Penn State. Shane McCartney from, you know, Incline Longboards was there. We were all doing our own thing. So anyway, yeah, it was a pretty cool time. But yeah, LDP really started on that trail for me, that 4.5 mile trail. Since actually very recently, Scott Ziegler has gone and skated that trail. He loved it. Now they extended it. You can do about 25, or I think it's about 25 miles now in one direction. So you can hit that 50-mile mark coming back, doing round trip. And it's really incredible. It's a trail that goes right along the on the left side of the trail when you're going out. The left side of the trail, you have the bay, and on the right side, you have the ocean. So really beautiful venue for skating.
So to circle back, where is like the trailhead that people could go to?
Oh, so that's at Cedar Creek Park on Merrick Road in Wantagh, New York, which is on Long Island. And
very cool.
Really, really a fantastic place to skate. That's where it started for me. That's where that LDP bug started for me. And that's honestly where I started the whole, like, you know, skating collection thing. And it's funny to think back on what I was riding at those times. So I mentioned that 42-mile ride. I was on you remember the Soda Factory from Silverfish?
Yes.
Okay, so the Soda Factory was run by Russ Owen, and, you know, Alex Newton has still produced some boards more recently, and he was, of course, involved then. And there was other guys like Jeremy Ross and some of the other Soda guys, the Soda family guys that were involved. But anyway, Russ was a madman, and he was really way ahead of his time. He was making all sorts of innovative shapes and concaves, and you know, he did some of the first bacon concaves, and he did he did the cleavage concave, which was like a W. It was like a double W concave. It was really interesting stuff that he was doing. Anyway, he did also a really good job from a marketing perspective of creating this hype on the Silverfish forum. You might remember, like, Russ ended up with his own division, his own channel. I don't know what to call it, but his own channel of the forum, because he generated so much traffic that he would shut down the whole forum. And he did this all auction style. So he would, you know, post a board, and you'd have to be the first to email in and have the opportunity to buy it. And he did these auctions periodically. And to be honest, I think that was where the whole, like, kind of collection bug kind of started for me. I mean, I had already, you know, had some boards and multiple boards by that time, but you know, I kind of just wanted to buy boards just to get them in the sale. You know, there was almost like a clout to, you know, I won that board, and it's a one-off type thing. So that's a lot of my collection is original Soda Factory boards from like that 2010, 2011, 2012 timeframe, where Russ was innovating. In my last living location, I had an entire room that was just Soda Factory boards on the wall. So, and actually, honestly, I'm getting to similar numbers with, you know, some of the more modern brands like Pantheon and stuff, but I truly appreciate the game of millimeters and the amazing differences that come from all the variations and decks and styles. And, you know, a lot of people who don't skate might look at that stuff and say, you're crazy. You know, why would you have so many? You know, it's a skateboard is a skateboard. And of course, we all know that's the farthest thing from the truth. There's a true game of millimeters that we're all playing here, trying to optimize and tune. and different styles. It's a whole rabbit hole, as you know. As I look at you with multiple boards on your wall behind you, I know.
You got to put them somewhere,
It's exactly right.
You did just show me right before this, allegedly a stack of about 300 skateboards, you said?
No. I'm in the triple digits. I think that stack is probably about 80 boards. But then I've got, all the boards downstairs that are in the rack, that I skate a little bit more commonly. But yeah, anyway, I think my collection is either in the high 90s or low 100s by now. And again, it's been going for a long time, and I purchased a lot of them with the intention of not skating them. It's not like I've skated them all. A lot of them have been purchased just to put on the wall.
I was going to ask you that, like for say Pantheon, because you ride Pantheon boards. Do you also buy one to put on the wall?
Actually, yes. I have my modern day strategies are basically that 2 is the minimum for anything that I'll buy, and then it goes up from there. I mean, I have a lot of supersonics, but to give a shout out to Jeff and this whole style here, as you know, Pantheon boards, they're not the custom one-off $500 per deck approach. It's the approach of, at least in my opinion, repeatability and quality and innovation through the design. So Jeff produces, boards that are the most optimized than any of my custom made stuff. And not only that, it's repeatable, meaning I can buy 3 of them and have matching setups for when, one gets lost when I'm traveling. And that's a whole side story. Boards get lost from the airlines, but anyway, for a day or 2, but I'm pretty stubborn, and it's like skate time is sacred time. So I'm not willing to sacrifice those skating moments just for gear. So I have repetitive setups for those reasons. When, things go down or you want to share with somebody, that's all, in my opinion, that's the whole benefit of Pantheon. So to your point, yes, my Pantheon collection has grown, but most of those decks I'm riding. So a lot of them on the wall have been ridden for the Pantheon side of things, or they are eligible to be ridden. I would have no problem pulling them off the wall and skating them. But anyway, I do appreciate the ability to buy, 3 of the same deck from Jeff and have it be, consistently the same and repeatable. Repeatability is a big part of what I think is critical here. I mean, that's that feeling when you get a setup dialed, and then I don't know if this has happened to you, but like for me, it's something so silly sometimes that throws you off. Like I'll have a setup dialed, it'll start to squeak in a pivot cup. I'll grease the pivot cup, and then you reassemble it, and it just doesn't feel the same.
Yeah.
It just like there's, whether it's the grease or you didn't have the nut tightened the same or the bushing shifted or whatever, I don't know. It gets down to those like really minute feelings. And at that point, I it's nice to have another one that's set up the way I intended for it to feel. I go skate and I come back and I'll fix the other one tomorrow. I'm not willing to sacrifice those skate moments to gear issues. So
exactly.
Anyway, yeah, that's Pantheon is a big part of the collection these days, but they're all a little different in the fact that they're all eligible to be skated.
Well, I think you touched on a really cool thing there about dialing in like a setup, and how there's all these tiny components in your skateboard that slightly affect, the overall feel. And if you are dialed in, right, you've been riding the setup a certain way, it feels good for hours, right? Sometimes tens, sometimes hundreds of hours. So maybe not hundreds, right? At that point, you probably cleaned it or changed something. But like you get the setup dialed in, and like you can sense just those little things. And I don't know, knowing how to dial a setup is a skill you have to develop as like a distance skateboarder, right? Like
absolutely. And style matters a ton. I talk to a lot of as like a lot of us distance guys can talk about gear for days on end. We all love this stuff. And I talk to a lot of the guys doing a lot of miles online on Instagram and Facebook. As you know, we have a pretty tight knit community, and that's one of the best parts of this whole thing. But anyway, there's a whole mental side to it. So I truly think that, there is no one piece of best gear. There's style that matters. And there's also the mental element, meaning if you skate a piece of, if you skate a set of wheels and they feel slow to you, whether they're actually slow on the clock or not, if they feel slow to you, you're not going to enjoy your skate. Yeah, it's just there's a whole mental side of things and a whole style side of things. So what works best for me and my style and what feels right in my head for what I think it should feel like, it might be different for you. So I think that, as you said, there's a whole skill and a whole art to tuning, especially in LDP. And you know, this is where, like, in my opinion, having three supersonics is totally justifiable,
right?
That are set up, you know, because I get used to a certain foot placement, I get used to a certain wheelbase, and then, you know, I might have one that's set up a little bit more for sprinting, and one that's set up for going to the grocery store, and then one that's set up for, you know, as you know, higher degree in the rear, so that it's meant for more city cruising and carving, you know, and people weaving. And anyway, so I appreciate the repeatability of having those options to do that with, you know, simply going online and buying 2 or 3 of them, as opposed to having to go and have custom boards, which, again, when they're one-offs, handmade, they might not even feel the same if you don't buy it at the same time. You might buy one today, and then in 6 months you go back to buy a second one, and it just feels a little different. Mm-hmm. So, and maybe I'm crazy in this whole thing, I don't know, but But I think that those small, minute differences, again, to me, it's an absolute game of millimeters. I think everything makes a difference. And if you think it makes a difference, whether it doesn't or not, that matters too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. The example you gave there was kind of cool. Weaving through people and having changing like the rear truck. I think it's so hard to explain how exactly that makes the board like take up a different space. I think we could plug Adam's video right now and say, like, go watch that.
Absolutely.
Because it'll explain everything about pumping.
The center of gravity. Yep.
And like,
absolutely.
So Adam Ornelas has a really good video on pumping. Go check it out. It'll explain kind of what I'm trying to say here, which is that if you were to look at like a bird's eye view of you skateboarding, like, you are able to
turning versus carving. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And, being precise with your movements is either sometimes you want that, and other times you want that more like surfy, like freeboard feel, right? Like,
yeah, I meant to say turning versus pumping. That's what Adam articulates very well, is, you know, like the difference in your center of gravity of turning versus pumping. And of course, having a higher degree rear is a little bit more conducive to cruising, weaving, tighter turns, or, you know, that more aggressive pump, less efficient pump that he mentions in that video.
Where you can spin around in circles, right? Like the really tight turning radius.
Oh, well, yeah, like a surf skate style pump. That's exactly correct. When you have a higher degree rear, it takes a lot of energy to get that pump going. And I mean, your top speed is going to be much lower because you're deviating from straight much more. You know, that less turning rear helps you go forward much more efficiently as you deviate less from straight. So anyway, yeah, that's the whole science of this is really interesting, and in my opinion is very addicting in itself. You know, like getting that sensation, dialing that board, and when you nail it and it feels right, and you actually start propelling yourself forward efficiently. And covering some ground, that's where, you know, hopefully we can get some more people into the sport, hook, line, and sinker.
Dude, it is so frustrating though. Like sometimes you just can't get the board to do what you want it to do. And it's like, it's not quick, right? You can be quick about it, but like undoing a bolt, taking out the kingpin, changing out the bushings, like that takes like so much time just to like change one little thing. And then go ride it to find out like 30 seconds in, nope, this isn't going to work.
So I have some habits.
Oh, you got a little tool.
I'll share with you. This is a highly recommended tool. Yep. A socket, extended socket with a hex to 1/4 inch square adapter here. So you can, anyway, you just take this is just something everybody should have. If you're sitting there on the floor turning a skate tool and a screwdriver, you're in LDP, you're doing it wrong. Tuning takes way too much time and effort that way. Get yourself a drill, and really what you want to do is run the drill with a clutch setting so that sorry, that might have been loud on the microphone. But anyway, it's low torque, so you still have to finish by hand. But yeah. But anyway.
No, that's a really good point. Really cool tip here. Like, yeah, let's just go over that. So you have a drill and you have a socket drill bit kind of thing.
And some good practices to share. I don't spin from the head of the bolt. I only use a screwdriver to hold it fixed, and I only spin from the nut side. It helps to not spin your grip tape up top and chew that up. I think I guess that's really the main thing, is that, you know, you're not chewing up the top of the board. I'm pretty anal about my grip tape and all that. So
like the bolt, right? Like it doesn't get stripped.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no or whatever.
Because I'm not turning it. It actually, I have very methodical ways here. There's a rhyme and reason for all this. I only use Phillips head hardware. A lot of guys use the Allen keys, so the hex head. I get it. There's more engagement, less chance of stripping. However, when you're on the side of the road somewhere, when we're 30, 40 miles up on a trail, it's a lot easier to find a Phillips head screwdriver in a gas station than it is to find a hex head and that exact size. So anyway, I'm all about that side of things. Anyway, to go back to what we were saying, yeah, I do not spin from the head. I do not strip bolts really ever. I spin just from the nut side. I'll use a tool with a clutch setting, a deep socket, so that it goes down any of the longer hardware we have to use in LDP, and finish by hand. So you're not over tightening, because it clutches out and stops spinning very, very low torque. So
yeah, that's a great tip. The finish by hand is also key.
Yeah, and on that note, I mean, just to keep going while we talk on tips here, when you finish by hand, finish with a straight tool. Everyone talks about snapping bolts with too much torque. There's actually that's the whole reason why, like the G-bomb tool, it doesn't have the perpendicular torque portion. You can overspin this fine thread hardware really easily when you have the lateral leverage like this, a big moment arm. But if you keep it straight, you basically guarantee that you're not going to over tighten. So a tool that is straight is a great way when you finish by hand to make sure you're not over torquing your bolts and making them prone to snap when you're, again, 30 miles out.
Yeah. Snapping bolts. That's another thing that I feel like maybe is...
That happened at La Diga.
Yeah.
Kenny Spranzo. Shout out to Kenny. He kept snapping bolts.
But did he fall? Like, because if you snap one, it's okay. But if you snap two, sometimes it's game over.
No, actually, it was wild. He snapped... he was skating in 1166. Ironically, I sold that to him years ago.
Oh, sabotage.
It was mine.
I see.
That's pretty funny. Ironically, it was mine. And great deck. It just, at the time, especially at the time, that zero rear was not fitting my style. It's a torsion tail rear. So Kenny snapped a bolt and kept pumping. I mean, we were mind blown. We rolled up next to him. I think it was the end of maybe day 2, and we were it was Jeff and I, we were if I'm remembering this correctly, it was day 2 towards the end, and we rolled up on Kenny, and he was pumping, and he only had one set of infinity bolts left in the rear. The other one was completely gone.
Oh no.
And it was flexing a ton, and he made it. I mean, but then on day 3, someone gave him an infinity bolt, and then it broke again. So I think it was just low, and it was hitting things. It was hitting like a perpendicular load. Clark just called me.
Oh, that would be hilarious if Clark just called right in. That would be fun. You just gave me a really good idea, though. I wrote this down: extra hardware for La Diga checkpoints. You never know. Oh
yeah, absolutely. And again, this goes to my approach. Infinity bolts are great, especially for bracket setups. I would recommend using vertical methods of tightening without the big moment arm of leverage, especially on bracket decks and infinity hardware, to make sure that they don't snap. But yeah, that goes again to my whole method here. I regular bolts are easy to replace, easier to find. So I personally like the whole approach. When I ran on my bracket setups, I typically only run one rear infinity bolt, and I do that just because usually it's like a length thing. I'm trying to run a specific length on the inner bolt, or I'm trying to just give myself a different feeling underfoot. I don't want to step on I'm trying to give myself a foot signal with a set of hardware as opposed to, a flat infinity bolt. So anyway,
I like that.
Yeah, I think that there's a method to that. Yeah.
The foot signal is cool. If you're riding a bracket setup, especially because you don't want to fall off the board, but it's also kind of fun for top mounts or like this, the supersonic is like, I always forget the name because I think subsonic and like
I know.
centric. I don't know. It's a supersonic though. I like having them on there too, because sometimes I'll walk on the nose a little bit, not too much, right? But
Absolutely.
Little dance.
Actually, this year at Ultraskate, I'm a regular skater, so my left foot is generally forward. And this year at Ultraskate, my left foot pinky toe had a little bit of that numb sensation for a day or two. I'm sure you know it from doing endurance sports.
I don't know if I've ever had that in the pinky toe, but
oh yeah, if you cycle, it'll happen in your feet from cycling for a few days, for a few hundred miles. It's totally normal. Especially also in cycling, it'll happen in your palms from riding, and bracing the handlebars for so long. You just get a little bit of nerve damage, and it's not permanent. Most of the time, it's not permanent. But anyway, at Ultraskate, on that upturn on the front, my pinky toe was numb from riding into that little upturn on the supersonic, and I'm using it for foot signaling. So it's obviously, it's a tactic to know where you are on the board without looking. However, when you do it for 200 plus miles, it takes a toll.
Yeah. The 24-hour factor. Yeah. Every little thing.
Yeah, that's what you don't feel when you do your practice skates, because even half that is not gonna aggravate that.
How do you?
But
yeah, practicing. Everyone always asks like, how do you train for an Ultraskate? Like, do you do 24 hours somewhere else? And you definitely don't. Like, I don't know anyone who has other than at another event.
I agree. And that same goes for me, at least with cycling. Like the longest events that I've done, every time I break a record for myself, it's at the event.
Right.
So I think that's pretty normal. I mean, who has the time to skate 24 hours and practice? Well, we did do, I don't think it was 12 hours, but we did do a 100-mile day at Carrier Park in Asheville. Me and a couple of the guys, Adam was there. That was January. But I think that was basically the longest training event for me.
Nice. I've never done, I don't think I've ever done 100 miles in a day that wasn't ultra. 94 was like the Diga, the day 3, right? Doing a 100-mile day just for the sake of it and outside of an event, it almost feels like that would be harder than doing, like 200 at ultra, right? Like
there's totally a game day mentality.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think to do it on your own is real tough, especially with no support. It's nice when you have stops to see guys like yourself, cheering us on and providing food and stuff. And obviously when you're doing your own self-supported thing, there's none of that.
Well, dude, you talked about doing that 40-mile skate, like one of your first rides. And like, that is brutal. 40-mile skates, fuck, they suck, like
well, especially when you don't know where you're going and you got to keep stopping. I mean, it felt like it took me forever. I think it was over 4 hours, so I didn't average any record-breaking speed. But that was when I think, at the time, that was probably 2009 or 2010. At the time, that was a lot of miles in the skate scene. I don't think guys were doing hundreds of miles yet.
It still is, too.
Or I guess, Paul and those guys went across.
That's true.
Made that video sometime around then. But that was also part of my whole hook into this sport was, seeing those rain videos that they made. And I had a Long Trex Demon Seed. That was one of my earlier LDP boards.
The Long Trex.
And it was a great time.
It was, dude. That was such the things they did there, those Long Treks on skate decks, like how popular it became and how many people I talked to who are like, oh yeah, that's what got me into this. Like Matthew Phillips is one of the ones who always talks about it and is like one of the guys I think of who wouldn't be, he always comes to La Diga, he's always there. And like, he probably wouldn't be there if it wasn't for that YouTube channel.
Absolutely.
We need more of that.
I agree. Yeah. They skated across Morocco I mean, that was all epic, especially it's still epic, but at the time it was just mind-blowingly epic that those guys went and did that.
Yeah, and they were on this like shitty pavement. They were just like doing the craziest shit. It wasn't like this endurance feat or this planned out sort of, even like ultra sport, like ultra running wasn't as popular as it is now. And like we take a lot from them, you know, like back then it just wasn't a thing. I feel like, especially for skateboarding at least.
Yeah, I agree. Different times. I mean, it feels like it was, it doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but I guess it really was. I mean, you know, when did Long Treks on Skate Decks come out? 2010, 2009, 2010?
I feel like it was
13
09.
years ago. Let's see. Long Treks Peru, Bolivia episode 1 was 13 years ago.
Yeah.
According to YouTube.
Sounds about right.
Morocco teasers 12 years ago. Yeah, so 2010, 2011. Those guys were breaking boundaries, that's for sure. Skate history. It's good. It's good skate history. This is the shame of losing Silverfish.
Right. Well,
Silverfish was an epic database.
You can go to that like back in time
machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done it. It's just they don't have everything, and it takes just so long for everything to load. And I've done that though. I've actually gone through and looked at some of the old Soda Factory sales threads, and it's funny because I can like see some of my old comments and stuff. You know, it's funny. Like, and then I don't know. One of the benefits of Facebook, at least, is that you can attach names to people. You know,
Sure.
like people aren't going by screen names. At least most people aren't hiding behind a screen name.
Yeah.
So when you show up to an event and you meet, you know, Max and Will and Timmy and all these guys who you talk to on the internet, like at least you can associate who they are. Silverfish was epic for many ways, but you know, it's funny to go back and look. Everyone's under a screen name. I got no clue who half these people are.
Yeah.
More than half. I got no clue who 99% of them are, you know? So
yeah. Screen names were a big deal back then too. You had to have a cool one. It wasn't like you were going to go by your real name. No.
And on Silverfish, there was clout. Like, do you remember like the upvote? Like you had like a score, you know, that you could have, or it was rep. That's what it was. It was called rep. It was like rep power. And if you weren't, you know, an ass, you would have positive rep power. If you like made an account and you were just a constant dickhead, you would have negative rep and it would show red. I mean, it's funny. It also showed you when you joined, like all that stuff mattered, like how long you had been around. And that was the original news feed, you know?
Yeah.
So like Facebook back then didn't have a news feed where it was like a constant update of nonsense. It was the Silverfish live feed that I would sit there and watch. And that was, and then Tappa Talk came out. Yeah, I mean, this is it's all funny to think back through all this. But anyway, moral of the story, it's a real shame that we lost all that skate history. There was a lot of really, really good stuff, a lot of good information, and just, you know, event pictures and stuff like that. A lot of that stuff was lost when we lost Silverfish. So
I do want to say shout out pavedwave.org real quick, because they still have some stuff on there. They do have some of these records, and we're trying to make the La Diga site better in that sense, where the records are, you know, all up there. I think it's important to preserve as much as we can. We could still talk to these people. They're around, where, you know, we could get the information directly from the source.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's good to have a database of that stuff. I mean, for reference for other people, but also, you know, that's a big part of a lot of motivation. I mean, I'm a pretty competitive person naturally. And, you know, don't get me wrong. I go out and I do slow skates and I just cruise and listen to music or listen to, you know, epic podcasts like Skating in Circles with Max Frank. But I also do enjoy, you know, competing against myself and the measure against others. I didn't compete. I didn't, you know, participate in this year's La Tour de Longboard, but, you know, I do enjoy the in-person events and seeing how everyone stacks up and pushing myself to continuously get better. That's all a big part of this. And you know, I think just to go back to why we touched on this, I think it's important to preserve those records and make sure that people can review that and give themselves goals and targets to hit. And the sport's only going to continue to grow and develop and prosper. So we need to do that. We need to make sure that we're not losing sight of the start, the history, and the pioneers that did it all.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Take more pictures, people. We were out west. I was out west with my partner, and I were out there to visit my brother, and we went on a skate with like a few other people I hadn't met yet, so it was like, oh, let's take a picture.
I saw the pictures.
Like these are like, we're going to look back at this in like 5 years and be like, oh, remember that weekend, and it's not necessarily like preserving like, oh, this guy did this incredible, or this person, this, woman, man, whoever did this like incredible thing this one day. It's more so just like looking back at these photos and being like, oh, there was like, remember that day? Like we had a community together and we rode for like 14 miles or some shit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Jogging the memory and remembering the finer details. I mean, it's funny. So Juan posted a video, a clip from La Diga the other day, and then I started looking through my photos, and I saw that photo from when we were sitting by the pool, and we could not wrap our minds around how that gate locked behind us. I mean, it's kind of like, I think it's kind of like you had to be there moment, but it's hilarious to think back on. And I don't know, those in-person events are where you get that stuff that's just like hilarious and funny to think back on. I mean, even just to think back a little further, a year ago, you and myself and Will and Harrison and Jeff and Adam and Jaron and a whole crew of everybody was out there. Hans, we had a pretty epic crew out there. We skated through Colorado. Where did we start? I know we ended in Aspen.
I think it's called the Glenwood Springs, but I don't know.
Glenwood Springs,
all those Colorado towns sound the same.
Yeah, I mean, but just people go to events and take pictures, because that's where the fun is at. That's where talking online is great. Don't get me wrong. Got a lot of good online friends here, especially in the skate scene, but skate trips are literally the best trips. They're the only ones that I prefer. The only time I really don't mind traveling much is really for skate trips, to be honest. On that note, at Ultraskate, I mean, one thing that's silly is I always laugh at how we're there for 24 hours. It's like the most miles anyone really does in 24 hours for the whole year, and there's like no photos ever.
Yeah.
I mean, at least like where are all the photos? We need to hire a photographer or something, but maybe that's not the worst idea in the world. But I know that that's myself and some of the other guys who have done it are always like blown away. It's like a couple of days later, I'm not kidding you, not exaggerating. I have one photo from this year's Ultraskate, one. So take pictures and share them. And I need to get better at it myself. I bought a 360 camera and I'll definitely be using it more. So
yeah, exactly. It's about holding yourself accountable too and stuff like that. There's a really good like that The Push is what it's called. It's on YouTube. It's about Andy and Eric hitting the 300 mark, That's that's an exceptional Ultraskate video. Like we should have one of those every year though. Like, and I'm not putting this on the organizers, like they do enough as it is. It's kind of on us as
I agree. Yep.
People going to the event to make that happen. So
yeah, I agree. They got plenty on their plate, but I definitely intend to at least try to invite either hire one or at least invite a friend who's willing to take photos for everyone, and share them. Doesn't need to be edited raw photos, but I think that also helps grow the event. I think we lack a little bit of media that comes out of it, and in total, I know there are videos and stuff that surface, and other people have done better at this than myself. But selfishly, I mean, like I look around and I'm like, I got no pictures from the event. I have one photo from when I was there. But anyway, I think that also helps, on social media to draw attention to the event and get more people involved. And that also goes for not only just skateboarders, but also for inline skaters. I mean, it's pretty cool to see those people crushing it there at Ultraskate, and it would be cool for that side to grow too. So welcome everybody to Ultraskate.
Yeah. It's such a fun. You mentioned this in a way, right? By saying no one takes pictures, but it's really, it kind of goes deeper than that, where you're there and you're on this vacation in Miami, and so much of your vacation in Miami is taken up, one, by riding the skateboard 24 hours and then sleeping before and after and just recovering after, right? And like preparing before. It's like, I didn't really do much of a skatecation. Sure. Yeah. I had a great time. Yeah. But like it's over and done with so quick. Like it kind of blows your mind. And before you know, you didn't take any photos.
To be honest, it's also a symptom of the fact that we're all, as you said, preoccupied and everyone's just trying to survive in that event.
Yeah.
No one gives a shit about photos and videos. when you are just grinding away and you are just, that mental game every single time you come around turn 4, it's like, do I get off and take a break? Do I get off? Every single time you have that mental dilemma. No one is concerned about how you look, and you probably don't look so great. So, anyway, yeah, I mean, that's some of it too.
I remember I came over I came through a lap, and I must have just had the worst face on. I felt like my face looked awful. I was just like, like frowning and like probably pale from and with the lights coming down, you just look even worse. And Andy just starts laughing at me. I'm just like, fuck you, dude. Like you're in so much pain. You're like, you can't even laugh at yourself. Like, let alone bust out a camera and start filming,
Yeah, like, exactly. I had my 360 camera at this year's Ultraskate. And ironically, the one photo that I have, I'm actually holding the camera. I am not recording at that moment, but I am holding the camera. I held it for maybe the first like 30 or 40 miles, and then I ditched it. It was, I just did, again, you're in survival mode. No one gives a shit about holding a camera or filming. I have a little clip that's on my Instagram from when we were all feeling fresh and the sun is coming up right around like the middle of between turn 2 and turn 3. When you're on that straightaway, on the backside straightaway, the sun is like coming up. It's on, the start of the day one morning. And that came out good, but then other than that, like, who gives a shit? You're just in survival mode. I just need to get around the track one more time. At least that's the goal of every single lap, is just one more. That's all you got to worry about. Because if you worry about 100 more, you're going to freak out. But anyway, yeah, I definitely need to do better. Take more pictures.
Yeah. And like I've said it before myself, like, oh, this is the year I'm going to bring my camera and make sure I do this. And the same exact thing happens, exactly what you said. You just get in this mindset where you're like, I need to survive the rate. I need to skate. Like I can't worry about that right now. And you're like pissed at your inside self for even mentioning it, like.
Yeah. Same thing happened at Ladiga this year. I had a camera with me on day 1, and day 1 was great. For me this year at day 2 at Ladiga, I started rough. I had a really, really tight right leg. My hamstring was like in a freaking knot at the start of day 2, which was a terrible way to start mentally and physically. But anyway, I guess it's evident in my filming, because I filmed a bit in day 1 and day 2 and day 3 camera. It was just like, who gives a shit? I'm not concerned at all about filming. It's just get to the finish line. So
yeah, even something, you look at Ladiga and you're like, oh, maybe you've done more mileage, or maybe you've done it before, and it's like, oh, this year I'll film, like I've done it before, I'll film this year. And nope, doesn't work that way. It never gets easier. It just never gets easier. Like, it's not the way it works.
In your head it might be, and that's maybe a symptom of optimism, is like thinking back to only the good times of the event and not like trying to focus on that roller coaster of emotion. At least for me, that's how it is. Like when I think back to Ultra, I think back to like how much fun I had at the end of it, where it was like finishing, and that last hour where, like, at least for me, like you get that little bit of last hurrah, that last energy bit, and you can, truck through the end and finish strong. Like that's what I remember. I don't really think back to the like 2 p.m. heat, and trying to survive that. So.
Absolutely. I do think though, like, so I was listening to or I was watching a ultra marathon runner YouTube video. This is my new thing. I love watching there's really good YouTube content for ultra running, and like these people have the same mindset as, distance skateboarders, right? And this one guy was saying the highs you feel in an ultra event are amazing. Like when you're out there and you feel good, you feel incredible, you know, but the lows are the same thing, but on the opposite
same
side
magnitude.
of the spectrum.
Correct.
Same magnitude. Yep. It's just like a sine wave, you know, like,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's all about like knowing that's going to happen and also like capitalizing on when you feel good, right? Like this one guy from France, Panta, who comes to a lot of ultra events, has said to me once while at Ultraskate, he said, "You're going to feel good, you're going to feel bad, but either way, it's not going to last long." And I think about that all the time, dude. Like it's just, that's it right there. It's not, you're never going to have an amazing day, but if you're ready to feel like shit, you might have an easier time. It maybe not easier, but preparing is helpful.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think Panta has provided some great advice for myself to noodle on as well while you're in that shitty spot of like, why am I doing this? But I mean, because, you know, that's just natural. I think anyone who says they don't have that thought is lying. At some point you will be like, why the hell did I choose to do this? You know? But anyway, I agree. And overcoming that is where the like major addiction comes in for me,
yes.
You know, riding that roller coaster of emotion. And it's also interesting, like what makes you feel good? Like, and just like distraction, at least for me, is huge. And a couple of like, you know, it sounds corny, but like one-liners of motivation kind of help. You know, like you mentioned what you say to yourself from Panta. I have those too, where I say to myself, like, you know, at the end of the day, you're going to look back and wish that you pushed harder. You know, like you will always look back and say, like, you little bitch. At least for me, it's like, why did you stop? You know, like, why didn't you keep going? When you're at 90 miles, why didn't you do another 10 to get to 100? Because to get to that spot where it's only 10 more to 100 takes another 90. So like I'm constantly playing those mental games and trying to push myself, and that's great. You know, reminding yourself that it does not last long in either way is very important. Also, you know, the other side of that, as I mentioned, is distraction. My Ultraskate 22, Jeff and I spent like a really long time. Maybe it was like 2 or 3 hours just shooting the shit and doing laps. It was right as the storm hit at the end of the day, and it was like that fiery sky. There's actually a picture of Jeff and I, like has a picture of Jeff and I skate like we were going into turn 1 out of the pits, and that fiery sky was coming over the bleachers. Anyway, like we rode for a good bit together, and kind of at the end of it, like at the end of the conversation, like looked at and we were like, holy shit, like that was awesome. So again, that camaraderie, like, you know, skating with people and not being by yourself, that's like an awesome thing. Also music, having a good playlist. I mean, gosh, you can have a good song, and for just the duration of that song, you feel good. And then as soon as it goes into the next song that doesn't give you that same vibe, it's like shit. And you're back down into like the shithole of feeling awful again, you know,
straight up.
So
yeah,
but that's where the mental thing comes in, you know, like, and that goes back to the gear topic. If you think you feel slow, whether you are or not, you're gonna not enjoy your time. If you think it doesn't feel right, it's gonna bother you. That stuff all builds over time, especially in the endurance events. At least for me, it all gets in my head. So whether it's actually slow or not, it is irrelevant, to be honest, at some point, because it's in your head. So yeah.
I think you touched on a really cool thing there with the whole addiction factor, where it's like, and I'm gonna quote another person from my past, Coach Dunn from high school. She once told us, she was my health teacher this year. She was like, you know, she was really like endurance-y person. It's like, you know, if you're out there and you hate what you're doing, if you go just a little bit farther, you're never going to be able to stop what you're doing. Like, you're going to be addicted at that point. Like, that's how endurance sports work. Like, you put yourself to a certain point, and then you go farther, and then all of a sudden you are addicted. And I think that's just all part of it, right? Like,
so, and I think that trickles into so many other parts of life. Like, you have to challenge yourself by choice. I think that there's a whole mental health element to that. And, I mean, the physical side, come on, it goes without saying. We're talking about skating hundreds of miles. We don't even need to talk about the physical requirements. It goes without saying that You have to have some level of physical fitness and dedication to physical fitness and nutrition to be able to do any feat like that. However, the mental side of things is I don't want to say it's overlooked because I think we all get it, but yeah, really, really important, and it goes into the other parts of life. So, I think that in your career and in your general practices of how you go about your day, I think that's all just really healthy. Challenge yourself and set goals that are attainable and have a timeline. And events definitely do that by default. Whether you're an ultra runner or we have an LVP event or a charity bike ride or whatever it is, knowing you have an upcoming task and executing to accomplish it and then actually achieving it, extremely healthy physically and mentally, in my opinion. Really important.
And like while we're on that, you kind of mentioned, right, when you're out there and you're like, oh, I should just go 10 more miles. Like you kind of made it sound like you're hard on yourself, right? Which I think can be good, right? But there's an unhealthy side to that too, where it's like, don't be too hard on yourself. You know what I mean? Like if you want something bad enough, you'll get there, right? Like just keep pushing, keep doing, trust the process. You will get there. But like, recognize your progress, right? That's a big thing, right? Where it's like, you may not have reached your goal, but look how far you've come. Like, look what you've learned. Even if you've totally bonked, like, at least you know more now, right?
Well, it's all relative. Absolutely correct. There's value in failure. You've learned you've learned a limit. It's not the limit. It's not the defined limit. It is a limit. You've learned your next hurdle to overcome. You've learned what doesn't work. Maybe it's from a nutrition standpoint. I'm a cramper, so I get it. That's my biggest issue always is cramping.
Same.
So that's nutrition, straight up nutrition. As you're saying, realizing your limits and understanding that there's total value in that, but also, yes, pushing yourself is critical mentally and physically, but also listening to your body. That's to dial it back, knowing when not to, when you can keep pushing. A lot of that is heat related for me down here in South Carolina. So, I might be able to do my 20-mile skate with no problem, 6 out of 7 days of the week, but that 7th day, it might be 110 degrees outside. And I have to realize to, dial it back. It's also, again, value in that just for learning, the event side of it is, when to control it and dial it back and change things. So all of that is really important. And that's a testament, like what you were saying, not doing too much at one time. This is a lifestyle. This is not an action. And that's where continuous events come in. I talked about like setting a goal. And then a lot of times what happens is, and this is natural, what happens is you set that goal for an event, you accomplish your goal, you achieve the task that you have put forth. And then after the event, you like, what do I do now?
Yeah. Yeah.
You lose that next goal. It's like, so that the next few weeks you kind of flounder and you don't have your routine or you don't train as hard in the gym or your nutrition drops. All of that I think is normal, and mastering the ebb and flow is where wisdom comes in. That's a lot of times why these endurance sports are dominated by older people. However, you get guys like Adam who just totally break the mold, but
it's that mental game. That mental game is strong.
Mental part is huge for sure. Yeah. The overlapping part of mental and physical, I think is a really unique part of Ultraskate. Like you are in a constant battle of mental versus physical, and sometimes mental and physical versus your goal. So like, your body is telling you, your body might be able to keep going, but your mind is telling you stop. And then you have to break through that and you keep going. Your body is doing fine. You might feel good for a little bit. And then your brain is telling you, what are you doing? This is wrong. Stop. Go to sleep. Anyway, that whole mental versus physical thing, I think ultra skaters are unique in that sense where we learn how to deal with that.
The whole concept is like, you're given 24 hours. It's not, oh, hey, complete this distance. You're done when you're done. You're done when you get there. It's, you have this amount of time. It's so different than like a set distance race because you're racing against your own ability to keep going, right? Like, and it just fucks with your head, dude. Like it's so hard to prepare for and just know, exactly how to handle things.
total head game for sure. And I mean, your setup is important, and making sure you have something you're comfortable on, and the efficiency is all is important, but the mental game is almost more important.
Yeah.
At least for me, I think one thing that's interesting is 2022 Ultraskate. I started on a board that I had basically built for Ultraskate, and I did not train much on it. And from a weight perspective, from like, an ability perspective, it was a hybrid push pumper. It was pumpable. It was, I don't know if I want to say, no, it wasn't lower than my other one, but moral of the story here is I actually built a board that on paper would be better for Ultraskate. And 30 miles in, I switched because it was just in my head. It was not what I spent time on for training. I went back to what I had spent time on for training. And even though that was over a pound heavier and on paper, it was a much worse choice, that was where I felt comfortable. All that stuff gets in your head and it matters for 24 hours.
Yeah. I've done that same exact thing. And I didn't learn my lesson the first time of like, oh, here's a new setup, I'm going to ride it at Ultraskate. Like, I did that once and I was like, oh, this isn't good. Like, I don't know, like, what am I riding? And then I did it again and I was like, oh, I fucked up again. Like, and
whatever is you're most comfortable with is the best setup, Yeah,
the best year I had was when I trained for, and like we talk about physical, it's still very important, but mental is bigger. But like training, if you go to Ultraskate and you've trained for months and months, your mental game is going to be better because of that. So
absolutely,
like everything is relatable to each other, right? Like
one thing that we have to touch on if we talk about training for Ultraskate, that so I live in South Carolina and I've been here for just over 7 years now, almost 8 years. Anyway, I'm used to the heat. I enjoy the heat. I like the heat. And I trained, I had my heart rates dialed. I knew which pace I wanted to hold. I had my zones all figured out. I have my nutrition dialed. Nutrition is a whole rabbit hole in itself of figuring out what works. Again, that's super personal.
Yeah.
That's even more personal than, what you think from a skateboarding equipment perspective feels right and all that. But anyway, I had all of that. I thought so freaking dialed, I was like, I thought so on point. And then you get to Miami and you are riding in this frying pan of the track. I mean, that's how it feels. You feel like so you are a piece of bacon out there sizzling, and all of that, my heart rates, my nutrition, my plan, everything was gone by like 10 a.m. It was like I was completely out of my element. My heart rate was way, way higher than I anticipated. I was aiming to maintain like between 130 and 140 heart rate for as long as I can. And I was in the 150s and 160s just from the heat. So then I'd get off the track and I'd be sitting in a chair and I would watch my heart rate not drop. My heart rate was just staying high. And then that gets in your head. And then, I was saying to myself at 11 a.m., how am I going to do this for all these hours when my heart rate is this much higher than I thought? So the plan was almost to my detriment at that point because I realized how far off I was from what I thought. So anyway, it's just so interesting. Ultraskate is it'll throw you for a loop unless you live in Miami and you understand the heat. That will absolutely throw you for a loop, even coming from South Carolina.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things, especially with heart rate, that I notice at Miami is it's like 25, higher than you're kind of like what you just said. But then at night it really drops. Like it really is just the sun. So like if you can figure it out through the sun, or what I did one year is I straight up just took the afternoon off, dude. And then it was the year with the fiery sunset that you just mentioned. And I went out right when the storm hit. I was like, oh, it's cooling down. Like, I'm just going to keep skating. And then I skated the rest of the thing, and it was fine. I think it's good to have that information ahead of time and be like, oh, 160 is way too high for me. Like, I need to either do something about this or accept the fact that I'm going to be working this hard for all day until the sun drops at least, and like kind of make a plan.
And then at that point, I'm questioning if I can even do that.
Yeah.
And this is where, you can't train for Ultraskate, especially your first year. It takes a year at Ultraskate just to figure it out, just to understand what the task is asking of you. And then after that, you can start to do really well. And then, of course, again, you get guys like Adam who break the mold and do 290 miles in their first year. But we're not, we'll just set him in his own little corner over there. And then the rest of the commoners can strategize for ourselves. But anyway, totally a wild experience. And again, addicting. Somehow you just keep coming back for more. You just want to keep coming back.
And we say like, oh, you go to your first one and then the next one, you'll know more, but it does not get easier. Like you know more about the task, but the task itself is still just as difficult.
Correct. Like, the only thing you can do is change your approach. The task hasn't changed. And the weather, of course, is always a variable.
Oh, you gotta love that. You gotta love that. You never know.
One thing that I did that really helped was take a shower.
In the middle of Ultraskate.
Yes. So my buddy Doug and I, it was last year, it wasn't this year, it was 22. Doug and I rented a small camper.
Yeah.
Actually, it was so perfect. Just to like elaborate on how perfect this was, we rented it from a person. It wasn't like it was from like a website, where like a lease share type thing, but it was for RVs. So it didn't go through like a major company. It was just some person who had an RV they were willing to rent. We picked it up like 7 miles from the track.
Wow.
We drove it 7 miles to the track. We parked it there the entire weekend and then drove it 7 miles back. We put like total of 15 miles on it. It was well worth every penny. And then we had an air conditioned room basically to go hang out in. And then there was also a shower. I mean, the shower, again, back to the mental side of things, was game changing. After it rained, I was like covered in sand and mud, and that shit sprays all up your legs. And, and then that was at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock on, the first day. So you're expected to go for, 15 hours after that. So, or more, depending on when exactly that storm was. But anyway, so it was like, I got sand in my shoes. My socks are wet. My shoes are wet. I went to that RV. I took a shower, changed my socks, changed my shoes. I came back like a different person, and I think that little strategies like that definitely help. I think I didn't do that this past February, and I definitely missed that. It was nice to get all that shit off of you and start fresh with a fresh pair of underwear,
Yeah. That same year was the year, I took that break and I would use someone's RV. It was Chris Lauder, who is a support boss. He's always at Ultraskate. He's always there holding down a tent. He brought an RV this year and was like, yo, just go chill in the AC. And that is such a game changer. Like, I'm there sitting on the side of the track in the shade thinking like, oh, this is the shade. I'm the coolest I'm going to be. And everyone's like, you should go in the air conditioning. Like, fine, I'll do it. And then I do it.
It's totally game changing.
Aaron's in there just passed out. I'm like, oh, this is where everyone's hanging out. Like, so
this is what's happening. Yeah.
Ate some candy, took a little nap.
Yeah. I'm going to try to do that again this year. Get an RV from somewhere local. It was worth every bit. It was worth every penny. So, definitely the move, It's kind of funny. I went backwards. I did that my first year and then did not do that my second year. So hopefully I'll execute it on the third.
It always looks so appealing to like do an Ultraskate where you don't focus on skating and you just focus on like hanging out at Ultra, but like you can't do that. Like you get there and you're like, oh, I'm going to skate. Like there's no way. I've even thought like,
correct.
At Ultraskate multiple years, I'm like, oh, I'm doing a team next year. No way I'm doing this solo again. And then not like 8 hours after I wake up from the next day, I'm like, oh, I got to do solo again. Like it's just, you can't get away. You can't get away. It's impossible.
There's an attraction to like having more fun and still being there. But again, in the end, being optimistic and just, and as a general personality trait, I think it's easy to look back and only remember the good stuff.
Yeah.
You don't think back to the moments or the extreme lows. You think back to the extreme highs. And I agree with you. You ask me to join a team at the end of Ultraskate, like, 20 minutes after, and I'm probably going to be like, that sounds freaking awesome.
Yeah.
But you wait till the next day of recovery, and it's like, no, I'm going to do that again. I'm definitely doing that again.
Yeah.
So,
the race against yourself.
one thing we should do for Ultraskate, and this is a great idea that is, I think we should definitely propagate here, is name tags. I think it would be really cool on your bib to have your name, and it could just be a blank bib, and we just write our names on it.
Yeah.
So not any extra planning burden. But I do a cycling event to raise money for Alzheimer's every year. It's a 3-day bike ride across the state of South Carolina.
Oh, nice.
And one of the cool things is that everybody gets a bib with your name on it. So you're like riding in a pack, or you roll up on a new pack, and a lot of it is communicative on the street, for the cycling, because you're on the roadway, but it'll be like, hey, Max, I'm rolling up behind you. Like you can actually say somebody's name as opposed to like, hey, dude, passing on your left. It's just like, and again, when you're skating with friends and there's a little bit of camaraderie, like, even if you don't know somebody great, it all just helps your mental game. So I don't know. I think it'd be cool to like roll up on somebody at Ultraskate. Again, there's also people that I talk to on the internet who I didn't even realize that I was talking to in person at Ultraskate. And then it's like, oh, wait, we know each other, or I know you. We've been Facebook friends for years. And I just didn't put the face together with the name. But if someone was wearing a name tag on their bib, I'd know exactly who everybody was. I don't know. I think it's a cool idea.
I love that idea of rolling up on a group that you don't know and just knowing everyone's name, like being able to address someone by their name. It's just one of those really subtle things that like it makes it like easy to like befriend someone, and like you kind of move up a level in the relationship, even if you never met them before, you know their name.
It's a great way to put it. It's just easier to befriend somebody. Like you guys are both, you can look at somebody and know their name. And, a lot of times too, you're wearing a helmet and sunglasses, and someone might not look exactly the same, or you might not realize who it is when you're rolling up behind them. So anyway, it's just nice to I think to have names out there. I think we would all make some extra friends if we all knew each other's names.
If they don't have room for the bib, maybe it's worth like just printing out a bunch of name tags that people could easily stick on their shirt or something. I don't know.
Yeah, we all have numbers, right? So I mean, I think we could just bring a freaking Sharpie and write your name on the side of it. I don't know. We'll have to see. It's like, the planners and organizers have like a freaking full plate of shit to deal with. So
yeah,
that is just not coordinating like a number to a specific name instead of just like rolling them out in order of arrival and check-in, like might be a lot of a burden. But anyway, maybe it's just as simple as a Sharpie. Write your freaking name, I'll do it this year. I'll make sure I start the trend. I'll write my name at the very least.
I'll do it with you. How about that?
All right, sounds great.
Two people
will remember this conversation and shout out the podcast as well.
Put your name on your bib this year at Ultraskate. We're starting a thing.
That's right. We're gonna start it. It's
cool.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So there's one thing I kind of wanted to talk about today that would be really cool, I think, just to get out there, because it's coming up this fall and it's already gone on one time, and that's the skate camp, I believe is what it's called, going on.
Oh yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah. What is the story there? Can you break it down? Because you've been, and it's Scott Ziegler's the one who's running it. So
yeah. So this is actually a really cool little brief story here. So last year, skate camp, shout out to Scott Ziegler. Scott has done a fantastic job. And to be honest, I would go to pretty much any event Scott plans. It's kind of like, you tell me when and where. If I can make it, I'll be there with no worries, because I think he's just got the right approach. But anyway, it was an awesome event. And last year what happened was there was a storm. There was a hurricane that rolled through. We were supposed to camp at Lake Monroe Park in Florida, and we had everything booked. And there was that's what happened. There was a storm, and it was taking place in November. There was a storm in October, and they had closed the park due to the storm, due to flooding. And there's a boat ramp in the park and some other elements, but we had already booked the event months in advance. Scott was awesome, got in touch with the park director, and they said that they would allow us to to, regardless of the rest of the park status, they would allow the event to take place and they would allow for us to camp out at the park. Great. So everything's in line. And I had personally coordinated with Timmy P, who lives in Charlotte, but about an hour and a half north of me here in Greenville. Timmy P and I were going to drive down. I had actually rented a car and we were going to meet up, drive down, and, have an awesome weekend skating. Well, so then another storm rolls through Florida. The days leading up to, we're talking 2 days before the event, there's another storm in Florida, and Lake Monroe Park says we're not gonna, we can't allow anybody into the park. The park's closed. So we lost that campsite. Timmy P and I looked at the calendar and the weather, and we were like, there's pretty much no way we're gonna take a drive down to Florida in this shitstorm that's approaching. Sure. And even if we did, the event's probably going to be canceled, or the event's going to be swimming through a freaking lake while you're trying to skate, So we were like, whatever, we kind of brushed it off. So Timmy P and I canceled our plans. I canceled the rental car as of Friday morning when we were, heading down for the event start. We were supposed to be heading down. We weren't going. It was canceled for us, at least. Well, the Florida guys ended up, we all had a WhatsApp chat, and the Florida guys ended up saying, we're doing the event. Scott, again, kudos to Scott, found an alternative campsite for everybody to go to. Now, granted, this was not the Ritz of campsites. This was a bit rough, even as a campsite goes. However, doable, grass, all good. So a bunch of the guys showed up. Excuse me, I skipped a whole step here. So Scott, confirms the event's going on. Timmy P messages me at I think it was 4:00 on Friday and was like, do you want to go? And I was like, you can't ask me that. Of course I want to go, And so we got in the car and we just left. We grabbed all of our shit. And I still had a stack of stuff by the door because I had camping stuff that I had prepared and put by the door. And so anyway, Timmy P and I decided to go down. We met up at maybe 7:00. By the time we got our stuff, met up. We met at maybe 7:00. I left my car at one of his friends' houses and it wasn't in Charlotte. It wasn't in Greenville. I don't remember where the hell it was. But anyway, it was Columbia, South Carolina. Timmy P had a random friend. This guy was, I'll do anything for Timmy P. No problem. You can leave your car here, and Timmy P. So you get it,
He's definitely got a few friends that.
Yeah. So I leave my car at this random guy's house, and then Timmy P and I get in his truck and we drive down. We end up getting down to Florida at 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and we didn't want to roll through the campsite at 2 in the morning with his diesel truck. So we just stopped at a rest stop off the side of the interstate 10 minutes away, and we slept for a few hours. I mean, I slept. I don't think Timmy P slept, but a poor guy. I think he was listening to me snoring probably. But anyway, we slept in the car in his truck for a couple hours, and then 6 a.m. we brushed our teeth, and then we went to the campsite. We met up with everybody. They had already had a skate on the Friday night before when we had decided to come up and we were driving, so we missed that. But no worries. Saturday and Sunday were awesome. So to get to the event specifics, basically it's kind of just it was as good as it gets. It was a weekend of some really cool people, great food. Scott had it catered. Cool. The trail was fantastic. Florida does a great job of having really smooth pavement, and it's all flat. So, skating in South Carolina here with some hills, it was really interesting in how it feels to just be on a totally flat surface. Some of the trail was flooded last year. Hopefully we don't have that issue this year. But even through all of that and all that, kind of last minute chaos of changing plans, the event was fantastic. We did a 50-mile skate on Saturday. Nice. And then we did I think it was maybe 30 or 40 on Sunday. It started raining. Mark Harris came on Sunday and skated with us. I mean, it was a great crew. Zach George was there. Titus was there. Corey was there. Timmy P was there. Marty Evans was there.
That's a crew.
We had a hell of a crew. Yeah, Juan was there. Ariel was there. Oh, really? I mean, it was honestly, it was freaking awesome. The Florida guys are an awesome group to skate with. And I can't recommend that event enough. Not only is it great skating, but we had again, Scott catered. We had a fire, and just hanging out, shooting the shit at the campsite was just was perfect. It was like a weekend where I got back and was like, well, back to reality. That was freaking too good to be true. And now I got to find another event to look forward to. Again, you get over that next day after the event. Sometimes it's like, well, now what?
Bounce from one
but anyway,
to the other.
that's a really great event. Regardless of your skill level, regardless of your speed, I think skate camp is an event that everyone should really try to go to. It's just pure fun. Now, also this year, I think Scott has incorporated a marathon race type thing. So, if you want to come and actually race, there should be a little bit of that this year too. However, last year we were not racing. We just had a blast skating. It was just a fun skate.
Such an underrated thing, like getting together with a group and just riding.
It was great.
It's so much fun. So much fun.
It was really just one of those weekends. It was like, like our trip to Colorado, where you just look back and like there was no drama, there was no injuries, there was no nonsense. It was just like a fantastic time. I mean, we had barbecue food that was fantastic. After the ride, we all got Hungry Howie's, and we all still talk about like Hungry Howie's is not anything stellar. It's not like it's like the best food ever, but when you're so freaking hungry, it is like the best food ever. Yeah. So anyway, awesome. We're all looking forward to that. I think this year's campsite will, as planned, assuming we don't have a storm that rolls through 2 days before, it should be, much more welcoming. I think that's probably a good word based on what when I talked to Scott, it sounds like there are some showers there, and there's an actual bathroom with plumbing and, some of the luxuries we didn't have in the makeshift, last minute campsite last year. But yeah, great time, great event. Shout out to Scott Ziegler for doing a great job, not only with the IDSA, but also with planning events like that. And I'd highly recommend anybody and everybody to try to show up there. It's just a great time, and look forward to skating with everybody. Can't wait.
Yeah.
Are you going?
Cool. I won't be going. I won't be able to make it, but it sounds like so much fun.
I just want to protest that a little bit and say that's a bunch of bullshit, but continue.
It's in November, right? So
yeah, I think it's November 10th.
I'm doing the Philly race in 3 weeks. I have a wedding to go to. So like
you said this on the last podcast. I remember you saying that you had a lot going on.
I do have a little bit going on. I'm going to India in December. So like I wasn't ready to plan a trip down to Florida, but I don't know. You kind of called me out there, so we'll see what I can do.
I think that'll be my first trip out of Ohio. I think that'll be my first trip out to go skate. Will be skate camp. And I mean, if you could go, or your brother and both you guys and whoever else, it's just so much fun. That's a great event. But of course, life happens. You miss this year, you come next year.
That sounds super ideal for an event. Like it appeals to everyone. Like if you were really gunning and you wanted to like set a personal record, it sounds like a great trail to like go try and like record a Strava segment or something, or like record, your fastest mile or something, like, or you can just ride with the group and like do a little bit of both even. And then it sounds like there's an actual race too. So.
I mean, and couple all of that with just like fun camping, good food, like and none of it is like super expensive. I mean, we're not staying, no one's paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars here. This is like a really doable, in my opinion, a really doable, attainable trip. So also it's November. So like that's on the tail end of all of us. I say us now that I'm going back north. Yeah. All of us northern people in the northern side of the country. It's like, that's when it's starting to get cold. So keep your feet wet and keep skating. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know that'll probably be pretty cold where I will be. So that'll suck. But yeah, skate camp is really, really a good time. I can't speak highly enough about it. That was really one of my favorite trips.
It sounds like a good old fashioned good time. It's got all these nice outdoorsy elements, and you're hanging out with friends, you get to camp. It's just like, you don't need all this tech to have a good time, right? Like it's like grab your skateboard.
I mean, it was really similar to, you know, our weekend in Colorado. It just was camping instead. So
pure.
Yeah, skate events are, as I said before, they really are like my favorite trips. They're, you know, it takes out that whole question element. Like when you travel somewhere with like, you know, your other friends, and obviously we all have other friends that don't skate.
Yep.
And that's great. But like when you travel to places with family and friends, there's always that element of like, what are we going to do?
Yes.
What is the entertainment? But like when you have a skate trip, there's none of that, because the task of what you're doing is pretty freaking obvious. You know, you're there to skate, and so even in the downtime, you find yourself with like-minded people. You know, so it's just, I don't know. Skate trips are just really, really, really addicting, and in my opinion, it's the best way to travel is with a board.
Yeah, such a funny thing. Like we wake up early to get out and ride our skateboards all day and then come home and just be like way too tired, or come back wherever, like to the campsite, and just be like way too tired to really want to do anything else other than hang out and chill. Like,
and so there's no question, no one is standing around going, what do you guys want to do? Everybody's just relaxed and enjoying the fact that we're not skating anymore until tomorrow. You know?
When we'll want to skate some more. Yeah. So it's
it's also interesting how, you know, in those multi-day events, you'd think that it gets harder and harder, meaning like your body becomes more and more taxed. But I don't know, you might start, as I said, like I started day 2 of Ladiga a little on the rough side, but I don't know, your body just adapts. Like you'll be fine, you know, don't worry about skating multiple days. It works out somehow. You might start a little tight or a little sore, but it always works out. Skating multiple days is just fun.
Ladiga is such a fun one because you mentioned you were rough on day 2. So like at the end of day 2, it's like, shit, I got to go back now. And that's just it. You just have to go back. Like just go back.
What was crazy for me this year, I don't know. I'm pretty sure I can understand what, in hindsight, what went wrong. You might remember we went to that pool. I got peer pressured by a bunch of all the skaters to have a beer. I like don't drink alcohol often at all. And I'm just kidding. There was no peer pressure. It was just a poor choice by me. But anyway, like, you know, everyone's drinking a beer and relaxing, and I was totally on board with that. And then it's like, in hindsight, I did not drink enough water. I had a beer. I did not have enough calories. It's like, I just screwed, and I slept like shit. Like, or I didn't sleep that bad, but you know what I mean? I'm not in, you know, as good as it could be for, you know, being in that shitty ass hotel in the middle of nowhere, where they're like the freaking guys cleaning the rooms or smoking cigarettes in the freaking rooms. I mean, like, I'm like not exaggerating, but anyway, I went into day 2 with all of that, and I just started feeling like shit. But about 25 or 30 miles in on day 2, I like snapped out of it, and I ended up catching up with Jeff and Jaron, who were farther up, and I ended up finishing with them. So yeah, I mean, that was, I was really in a shitty spot on day 2. I really did not feel well. And it was like the type of thing where I was like, well, I'm not going to stop skating until I physically can't stop, but I do not want to be out here on a board right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, until I physically can't skate anymore, excuse me. But I did not want to be out there. And I just, somehow it just started loosening up, and then I don't know. But to your point, you know, you get to the end of day 2 and you're like, well, got to do it all the other direction now the next day. I don't know. Somehow those multi-day events, day 3 always seems to be the easiest.
Multi-day events, we need more of them, I think. Like the skate camp is a perfect example of one that doesn't need to be like Ladiga, where it's like we go here and then the next day we start from where we stopped, and then the next day we ride the whole trail back. Like you can do like skate camp. It sounds like there's like a trail system, and you just kind of go out and you do what you do, or like you guys pick a distance or something, and then there's like the race. And like, it doesn't even have to be like that. It can be like, all right, we're going to go to this trailhead on Friday. On Saturday, we're going to go to the opposite side of town, start at this trailhead, ride this trail up this climb or whatever. And then on day 3, we're going to do some other loop, you know, like it doesn't necessarily have to be like all connected, right? Like there's a lot of different ways you can do a multi-day event. It's really fun to think about.
One thing that's noteworthy of skate camp is, you know, if you want, we all have a common base, so we're not changing places There's no people don't need rides anywhere. There's no support vehicles really needed at all. So as you know, that's a whole, logistical obstacle for those other types of events. But for skate camp, meaning like if you wanted to skate the trail tip to tip and ride, whatever it is, 55 or 60 miles, then great, you can. And if you want to ride 10 miles out and then ride just 10 miles back and do 20, you can do that. And we all end up in the same spot. Everyone has a great time. Of course, there's value and fun in skating together with people, but I mean, obviously, it's not realistic for everybody to be at the same pace. So you get into your little cliques and your little groups with people. But anyway, I mean, it's a great time.
Yeah, that's kind of what a group ride is, right? It's not necessarily like you're all in a peloton together, like maxing out your speed. It's very much spread out, like.
Pretty rare, actually. I mean, I'd say one of the rides where we were the most together was that Colorado ride. Maybe for the first 25 miles, we were mostly together.
Yeah.
And then we kind of spaced out after that. But I mean, I agree. It's not realistic for everybody to be like in the same niche. It's like, little pockets of people develop and ride at their own pace.
Yeah. Group rides are fun.
Yeah. We need to try and, I mean, I personally would love to get involved in trying to coordinate more people to skate together. And that is something that, again, looking at Social Push New York City and Social Push Cincy. And I saw Social Push DC pop up. I think it was DC. Yeah. All these things that are popping up, like, yes, we need to get people together to do these events more. And it's definitely one of the best parts. Some of the best friends I've made are just skate friends, like-minded people.
Yeah.
I met Timmy P at the pump track.
Did you really?
In Charlotte.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah. So actually, funny story. It was COVID time frame. So, everyone was doing their own thing. And I have always wanted to skate a pump track. And now, maybe 3, 4, 5 years later, they're way more common than they were, a decade ago. They're all over the country now, but they were not years ago. There's one in New York City area that I really wanted to skate when I was living up there. I never skated it. And then I woke up one day on like a Saturday and was like, where's the closest pump track to me? And sure enough, there was one like an hour and 20 minutes away, just south of Charlotte. So I go there and I'm skating and I sucked, especially the first time I went. I, was eating shit a little bit here and there. And, so I'm sitting off to the sideline. And once you get the hang of it, it's just it's like addicting fun and addicting in a different way from LDP. But anyway, it's just so much fun. And I ate shit. I'm sitting off to the sideline and I start talking to these other people. And I mentioned distance skateboarding in some capacity. And one of the ladies there said, "Do you know Timmy P? I've never heard anybody else besides you and Timmy P mention distance skateboarding." And I was like, I think I've seen the name on Facebook, but no, I don't know him personally. And then I like messaged him on Facebook and was like, "Hey, somebody gave me your name, and as a distance skateboarder, I see your posts in the groups. Like, let's meet up." And like we met up and we just became really good friends really, really quickly. Yeah. And then like actually, Timmy P always told me about you and your brother. He was always like, "Oh, the Franks are great guys." Yeah. And then I finally met you guys. But when we were talking about like, the first year I was going to Ultraskate, we were talking about some of the crew and some of the, the fun of just hanging out at Ultraskate, not even the skate part, just the day before, that night before is just its own bit of addicting fun. And we were talking about that and he was like, "Oh, wait till you meet the Frank brothers." And, he was name dropping other people too, but specifically you and your brother.
He is such a good dude. Like he's one of the guys. So first of all, for those who don't know, I guess Timmy P is like, he's kind of a bit of a legend. Like he's been to Ultraskate as many times as I have, probably more, I think. And like, so probably all of them, because I've been to 8. He's probably been to probably like all 11, like he's like one of those guys. And, he's a really awesome dude, really nice guy. He's like build skateboards, right? Doesn't he like
he's
sometimes?
Incredibly clever and creative. He builds all sorts of cool gadgets and things. Skateboards included. He presses some decks and I mean he made that giant one that looks like a big paddle, that kind of like the Eric Palmer style with the 2x4. It was that theme, of course. But yeah, anyway, Timmy P is a gem. So for those of you guys that don't know, it's another good reason to go to an event is just to meet Timmy P.
Yeah.
He's
He's always got the
he's
helmet.
just a great guy.
He's got a helmet with a brim, and it's got a bunch of stickers on it. He'll have a paddle in his hand.
No, it's hydro dipped. It's hydro dipped.
Oh,
It's so it looks like stickers, but it's hydro dipped.
what is that?
He's you know, like when you dip like a pattern, you ever see like people do
that's really cool.
Like into like a liquid with a pattern, you dip like a
Yeah.
plastic piece in there and then it takes that pattern, that you know, that artwork that's in the liquid. Yeah. So yeah, he's just an
so
all around
cool.
badass skater. He's been skating forever. You know, he was doing the old competitive stuff where, you know, these guys were twirling, you know, doing pirouettes all these times, and he still does all this shit. You give him two boards and he'll put one foot on one board and do a manual, you know, a manual with one foot on one board, and then the other foot is on the other board behind him doing a nose manual, and he can ride around and pump around like that.
That's so
he
cool.
He does all sorts of shit. He's an old school skater, great guy. Everybody should want to be friends with Timmy P.
Yeah, Timmy P. All right, man. Well, hey, we're kind of, you know, getting there on time here. You said you went on a skate already this morning. I have not gone on a skate today, so I won't even be doing that.
Certainly, I'm sorry to hear that. That's unfortunate. I got a little skate in on my way to the gym this morning, so it's actually beautiful weather here. Somehow north of us is still 100 degrees. However, right now in Greenville, the high for today is 82.
Ooh.
Which is not exaggerating, 20 degrees cooler than it was a week ago. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, you guys are getting all that heat.
Yeah, we had a lot of heat the last few days / weeks. But anyway, this weekend seems really nice. The holiday weekend, kind of perfect.
Well, hey, I want to make sure we say if there's anything like you want to get out there, you know, before we kind of drop off here that we didn't cover. It doesn't have to be skateboarding. Whatever.
No, I don't have anything too crazy to cover. I just think, you know, just to stress, awesome for people to come to events. Always great to make new friends. I'm always happy to help anybody when it comes to setups or tuning or anything like that. If anybody has any questions about any of the gear that I ride or how to tune something that might work best for them, I'm always happy to help. Please don't hesitate to send me a message on Instagram or Facebook. I truly enjoy all those skate conversations, and I'd love to get more people involved in the sport and more people enjoying, you know, the boards the way they're meant to be enjoyed. You know, they got to feel right. So anyway, yeah, that's it. Just let me know what I can do to help, and if anybody has any questions. And I hope to see all of you who are listening at an event soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 things I got to ask. One, you said social media, Instagram. What is your Instagram?
Oh yeah. So luckily there aren't too many Gavin Contis out there. So nice. I think hopefully I should be pretty easy to find on Facebook. On Instagram, I'm just at gconti13.
Perfect.
Just don't hesitate to reach out. You know, I'm always happy to make new friends, and you know, if I can help anybody dial in their setup, it'd be my pleasure. So.
And then you want to see people at events. Your next event is the skate camp, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I'm moving up to Ohio, and I think that skate camp will be my first trip out of my new job / new living situation. So nice. I'm very much so looking forward to that. I got to book my flights. Juan, shout out to Juan. He got me taken care of with a campsite. So again, make friends. People look out for each other. I'm dropping the ball because I got a lot going on over here, but these guys are all booking this stuff for me.
Man, they got you covered. That's like right. You said, the Florida crew is great. It's a tight crew. They know what they're doing. They hold it down.
Honestly, I foresee many Florida events for me in the near future, even just Florida weekends. Awesome guys to go skate with. So great distance crew down there. Shout out to the Florida guys.
Yeah. And then we'll see you in Miami, obviously, after that.
Oh yeah. You guys will definitely see me there. I'll be there. And I look forward to seeing you and your brother and the rest of the guys. I'm hoping we can get, you know, Joe there. And of course, you know, Adam and Jeff and Jaron and all those guys I'm sure will be there. But, you know, would be awesome to get Harrison, maybe some of the old school guys back there too.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. When I saw Joe, I was like, so Ultraskate? And he's like, well, and I was like, oh yeah, he's coming.
I've already busted his chops. I was like, to try and get him to come up. I don't know if he can. He didn't give me the solid yes.
Yeah,
but I'm not accepting a no yet. So we'll see how it goes. We just got to try and get these guys there. It'll be so much fun. He knows.
Yeah,
he knows.
He's like, oh, you guys are training for Ultraskate, huh? Like almost
actually, on that note,
rubbing his
I did the math a couple days ago. Ultraskate is like 167 or 166 days away. So guys, here's your warning.
Yeah,
it's approaching. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's going to come too fast, but it's going to come up fast once the holidays hit, because it's like, Thanksgiving is end of November, and then next thing you know, it's Christmas and New Year's, and then at the end of New Year's, you're a month out.
Yeah.
So it all happens real quick.
Yeah, and in August, I'm always like, ooh, I gotta be skating right now. Like, this is it. If I don't start now, it's gonna be hard. Like, it's just gonna get harder and harder to.
You gotta have a rhythm, especially as the weather changes. Trying to create the habit when the conditions outside suck is very hard.
Yes. Yeah.
So at least for me, maintaining the habit a little easier.
It's so much better when you are at a point in your training where you crave being on the board, so that when it's shitty out, you're like, ooh, I think I can skate today, rather than being like, oh, it's shitty out, I'm not going to skate today. There's two mindsets. You can be on either side of the fence. You want to be on one side by the winter time.
I totally agree. We've talked a lot about that mental side, but it's so important.
Yeah.
It's so important. It'll totally change your training. So yeah, a little nervous about training in the Cleveland area for Ultraskate, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, man, you'll
have to figure it out somehow.
You'll figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. Be like Paul and Adam freaking putting studs in wheels.
Yeah. You'll figure it out. You know what I mean? You do something like that's incredible. Yeah. If someone's listening and doesn't know, Paul has a really cool video on this where he has studs in his wheels and he's riding on a lake that has been iced over. It blew my mind in a way where I was like, this could be the future of winter training for distance.
It's totally wild.
Yeah.
Totally wild. I agree.
So,
yeah.
Anything's
so
possible.
Leave it to him and Adam to freaking innovate on that shit.
Yeah. I'm no scientist.
But anyway, yeah, well, it's been a pleasure. This is a great podcast. Thanks for putting this together. I've been enjoying listening to it, and I'm looking forward to hearing what else you put together for us.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you coming on. This has been a great conversation. Getting perspectives from everyone is the whole goal here, and you really shared a lot, and I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's been totally my pleasure. So thanks for what you're doing here, and keep it up. Thanks, Max.